Hey everyone, welcome back to Contractor Evolution. Igor and Benji here coming at you from the studio.
So when you add up all the quotes, the estimates, the proposals, whatever you call them, that you do in a year, when you consider the sheer volume of sales opportunities your business does every season, you realize that even a slight boost in efficiency and closing ratios has a massive impact on how much revenue you're going to sell. If you could land even one more deal out of 10 quotes that you give, how many more dollars would that add up to? How much more profit would your business generate with no extra effort? Like, do the math. Seriously, the number might surprise you because it's a lot.
Now, one of the easiest ways to maximize your closing ratio is by leaving your customer with a beautiful and informative proposal that does a bunch of the selling for you. Something that not only articulates the scope of work in precise detail, but also showcases your brand as the obvious solution to your customers' problems. It turns out there's actually a formula to building such a perfect proposal, and to walk us through it, we have Ryan Shantz on the show today. Now, Ryan is the founder of SumoQuote, which is a software tool for contractors designed to help them build engaging, client-facing proposals that demonstrate immense value and stand out from the competition. For years, Ryan has obsessed over how to craft the perfect proposal that will stand for itself and drive more sales. Why is he qualified to be a subject matter expert on this topic? Well, for years prior to SumoQuote, he owned, and in fact still owns, a massive 8-figure roofing company in Calgary, Alberta. And when he implemented these proposals into his company for the first time, their closing ratio shot up from 27 to 44%. And so SumoQuote was born. On today's show, he breaks down the ingredients that go into a proposal that sells itself.
So some of the cool stuff we get into with Ryan today are the 5 core items that exist in every single perfect proposal. We also get into how these better proposals allow you to scale your sales team while also protecting you from liability or those like really difficult, but I thought this was included kind of conversations with your customers at the end of a job. And he also tells us a bit about how he sees the future of contractor sales evolving over the next 5, 10, 15 years. So if you want to close more sales, you want to charge more, and you want to save time, today's episode with Ryan is a must listen. You're watching Contractor Evolution, where we unpack the systems, tactics, and skills you need to take your fast-growing contracting business to the next level.
You're here to learn what it takes to scale up, work less, and increase profitability. You've come to the right place.
Stay tuned to learn what separates the new breed of contractor from the old school, and welcome to your ultimate guide on the business of contracting.
Hey, just before we jump into things, I wanted to let you know you can get the free resources that we talk about in this episode in the show description. So hit pause right now, go download them, and they'll be waiting in your inbox by the time we finish this episode. Hey, Ryan, thanks so much for being on the show.
It's great to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Ryan, it's amazing to see you. This is so good. We're excited for this episode. So just to start, can you tell us a bit about where SumoQuote came from? Like, how did you get to be doing what you're doing?
Yeah, you bet. So I was running our sales for a roofing company at the time. Yeah. And we were trying to figure out how do we impact the homeowner at point of sale, right? We were doing a ton of insurance work, but we knew that was going to come to an end. And so we were trying to focus on retail and figure out, okay, if we're really going to master this retail thing, what does that look like? We, at the time, and still are, we were the largest residential roofing contractor in Alberta.
Wow.
So we were never going to be the cheapest, right? I had no interest in being the cheapest out there. So, so it was a matter of coming up with some tech to create this really polished, professional, standout presentation to try and impact the homeowner, and had tremendous results with it. So
cool. So you guys had a lot of salespeople, and you're scaling out the retail side of sales, and I guess at some point you realized that just like the old school proposals, like writing it on the back, like on a piece of paper, is not enough anymore.
It wasn't cutting it anymore. No. Right. So, well, and it's interesting because I remember my one salesperson, he was out there, and this was the tech wasn't great at the time. This was our prototype, but the output, this report looked amazing still, right? And sales guy went out, met with the homeowner, and walked around with the homeowner. The homeowner is one of these gruff guys. He was just like, hey, just, Grant, you're not just getting my work, right? Or my business. So, so Grant's like, yeah, I get it. And he's like, I'm getting other quotes. Okay, yeah, I get it, right? So Grant goes back, builds his quote, sends it to him. Guy calls him 20 minutes later. And he's just like, hey, Grant, like I said, you're not just getting my work here, but holy smokes, man. I have never seen a quote like this in my life before. Like, this thing's amazing. And when I share that story, I'm talking with people, I'm like, think of the last time somebody sent you an invoice and you were so compelled by it that you had to call them to be like, thank you for sending me this invoice. Right. This thing looks amazing. Right. Like, it just stood out in such a different way from anything else people had seen before. Right. It had a huge impact on our closing rates and our sales.
Really cool. And so just so listeners are clear, so you guys went from what was essentially like a paper, almost like written, like very basic quote and proposal to something that's like full of graphic design, lots of photos, very visual. Was that the transition?
That was the transition. Yeah. So we had a professional graphic designer mock everything up, put our colors on it, made it really visual, had the marketing pages, photos included with it. Right. Customer's house on the cover, kind of the full 9 yards that we were trying to do with that experience. And just a totally different impact on the homeowner.
And even the V1 that you built, like this rudimentary, pretty simplified version, like right off the hop, it made a massive difference.
Yeah. Actually, we were tracking everything, right? And so our data, as we were looking at it, we went from on retail quotes, so not the insurance, not service, not the big multifamily, on retail quotes to homeowners. We went from a 27% closing rate to a 44% closing rate. So it increased our closing rate overall by 63%, which for our business was millions of dollars. Like it had a massive impact on our business.
That's huge. When you're doing a lot of quotes, that difference in closing ratio is massive.
Yeah, that's almost 20%. It's like, it's huge. 17% increase.
Yeah. Well, 63% increase, right? Like, multiply it like it was. But like it's big impact for sure.
27 to 44 is you're landing, basically a job and a half more out of every 10 estimates you give for no extra work. It's just like a pretty, and as I'm sure, as we'll talk about later, these proposals were much faster to build and easier to send out and stuff like that. So really fascinating. Like you own a big roofing company. You're like, this is a pain point for me and my sales team. There's got to be something that we can do to fix it. And then voila, you come up with this concept. And you're like, actually, there's going to be a lot of other people that need this too. Right. So then that became not just your own little tool, but then it became SumoQuote, and it's since expanded and sort of proliferated across the industry the way that it has.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. I mean, we saw the results. I started talking to my partners and saying, hey, you guys, I think we're on to something here. I could sell this to other people. This is a pain that other contractors have. And it took about a year and a half of me kicking them, being like, no, seriously, like we could do something here.
This is a thing.
Before they finally said, okay, well, we don't know exactly what you're going to build or how you're going to build it. They knew what we were going to build, but it was, they funded it. We all went after it together, and it's been tremendous.
Yeah. So cool. We've had other like tech guys in the contracting space on the show before, and it seems to be that's the common pattern of how these things get. So that's the inception story every single time. Like, we had a business problem, we needed to create a tool, and then we realized, wait, there's going to be 1,000 other people that have this problem as well, and here we go. We're off to the races with this cool new concept, this cool new product. So really cool backstory on SumoQuote. I wanted to ask you this, like, we've talked about this on other episodes for sure, but this technology has really changed the game over the last little while for contractors. I wonder, from your perspective, like over the last, let's say 10 to 15 years, what has changed about the business environment, about consumer preferences, about competition, about financing options, about other technologies? Like, what has changed to make it so that just like writing a number on a napkin and showing it to your customer is no longer good enough? Like, you cannot get away with having a crappy quality proposal. The standard has risen when it comes to demonstrating value. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts on just how this landscape has really evolved over the last decade or so to make it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things, right? And the first was something which hasn't necessarily changed, but it's evolved the solutions for it, which is how to stand out from your competition. And then the second being homeowners' expectations. And those have certainly changed over the last little while with technology. But that first one in standing out from the competition, I mean, really, when you think about it, like when you really step back and think about it, we all want to we believe our business is best. We're going to give these this phenomenal experience. We're going to do a great job. But from a homeowner's perspective, how are they supposed to understand that?
They don't know. Yeah.
No, they're looking at websites. They all look the same,
Totally.
right? Like they're looking at Google reviews and it's like, yeah, you're over 4 or you're over 4.5. It's like, great. Like, but how do I really tell you apart or really know?
Right.
What I say is it's like, yeah, these salespeople, myself included at the time, we come to your door, we sit in your house, whatever it is, but it's like we all kind of look the same, sound the same, even smell the same, right? Like it's
Contractor sales guys here.
Yeah.
Right. So for us, and the reason SumoQuote's had such a big impact is it's like at that point of sale, when they are trying to figure out who to go with, you give a differentiator that nobody else is giving.
Yeah.
Right. The salesperson isn't always there when they're deciding. Your quote is always there, right?
Right.
And if you've got 3 quotes, 2 of them look like they come from a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet or a super generic CRM type of thing that all look the same, right? And then you've got one that's professionally graphic designed, their house is on the cover, there's inspection photos, it's testimonials, like it's giving you options and financing solutions, and it's totally like they look at it and they're just like, oh yeah, well I know why you're 10% more expensive, right? Like
Totally.
I can justify paying more because I believe you're going, if this is the craftsmanship you give to your quote, you're going to give me something better than everybody else on my roof or in my house or whatever it is.
But on the note of changing trends and news, like in what's changed in the last 10 to 15 years is your ability to demonstrate this is so much more, right? Like the technology and the ease of use on this really wasn't around even just 10 or 15 years ago to be able to do this. So even though you may have always been an amazing company in your delivery and your customer experience, there just wasn't as many opportunities and ways to show that early in the process as there is now.
Yeah. Well, and that's that kind of second point that I was talking about, right? Where it's customers' expectations.
Right.
It's because those technologies are out there in all those industries, and now they're starting to expect it from every industry.
In other industries, you're saying, right? Exactly. So like so like this morning I was waiting for an Uber, like you got the notification a few minutes before, then that he's at the curb, and like the whole experience is so easy. But in contracting, it's like super old school, right? The guy rolls up in a rusty van. It's like the same. It's just like it was in like 1979, right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Uber is a great example. You think about it, banking. I can't remember the last time I was in a bank.
Right.
Totally.
Why would you need to? You've got your app that does everything. Or even grocery shopping.
Yeah.
I've got 3 young boys. Why would I spend an hour in a grocery store? That's insane.
I hated being dragged around by my dad, man. He would go through every shelf and it would take forever. This is like childhood nightmares going grocery to superstore with my dad.
I hate it.
Right? Like,
Yeah, totally.
So every other industry out there is adopting technology and providing these unique, crazy, impressive customer experiences.
Why can't we?
And contractors are kind of the last to the show, the last catching up a bit to an extent.
Yeah,
right?
but it's changing fast right now. Like it's 2021 right now. Like we're in this period where it's like it's ratcheting up so quickly, and I think most contractors are feeling it. Yeah,
keep up.
Yeah.
Others, right?
It's gonna be tough.
It's going to be tough. Yeah. And there's the proposal, but it is very neat as an entrepreneur in the contracting space to take that lens of what is my it's not even customer experience, it's my prospects experience look like with me, right? Like, is there an opportunity? Is there like a text message thing that'll remind them 2 days before the estimate time, 1 day before, an hour before, right? Hey, John, just a heads up that your estimator, Susie's on her way and she's going to be there in about 10 minutes, right? Like we're looking forward to seeing you, right? There's so many different ways that you can interact with your prospect and sell to them even prior to the quote. But this is really, really cool what you guys have created. The other thing that I love here is that you are going to put out proposals and quotes, and a whole lot of them, right? We were talking about this, Benji, recently about like how many super crappy proposals have we handwritten over
a lot.
and over
Well, that's what I wanted to say. Like this hits close to home for me because I've had to sell around a bad proposal for a long time. You have this carbon copy piece of paper. I have really shitty handwriting, so I'm also like trying to do it perfectly, and like, so that's frustrating. And
you're gonna do it anyway. You got to make a proposal one way or another.
No, I know. So like having it be a manual process is really dumb. Not giving yourself the tools to make it look really good is really dumb. And I always felt like, okay, well, I'll get these like product pages and I'll add that in and I'll put it in a colorful folder. Okay, that will maybe make it look less bad. And then when we sit down and I go through it with them, I have to put on a freaking magic show, which is basically taking their eyes away from the proposal because it sucks so much. I'm just like, look at me, like let's get this deal done. Don't mind the bad handwriting and the manual,
carbon copy.
Totally, like just ignore that. We're gonna do a good job. And then I remember like doing a big upgrade at the time, which was basically converting it to an Excel table that I had templated out, and I'd put some numbers in, and then I bought like a mobile printer. Can you imagine? It's so stupid. Like you're driving around with a mobile printer that plugs into your computer in your car. Like it's just, so I thought that was a big upgrade. Now I'm looking at, and we'll include this like sort of amazing proposal example from Ryan in the description for listeners if they want to look at it. I'm looking at this going like, man, that would have made my life a whole lot easier. Totally.
So Ryan, I want to get into this. So we've got an example of like a really, really good proposal that's produced by SumoQuote. You guys are obviously experts in this space. Like this is your business. This is the whole jam, is how do we blow customers away with really amazing quotes, proposals. Can you walk us through, like, in all that you've learned, so running the roofing business, now doing what you guys do at SumoQuote, what are the components of a really great proposal that sells itself?
Yeah, no, of course. And I mean, it's interesting, right? Because Benji, you were just saying, oh yeah, I was including this and I was putting this in there and I'm putting this pack together. A lot of the time, contractors, they already know that they need to be reinforcing with different things.
Yeah.
And they're putting 5 attachments on an email.
Right.
Or they're throwing it all in this binder, and it's just like, hopefully the homeowner can kind of figure out which pages really matter and in what order and how to go through this, right? So yeah, there are some really specific things that help out a ton as you go through this. Cool. And I'd say the first thing is put the client's house on the cover page. And really what we're looking to do there is it's this whole, do you guys know Story Brand, Donald Miller?
Big fans, yeah.
Okay, right? Like, so it's this whole thing on how do you make the customer the hero, and as a contractor, we're the guide.
Yes.
Right? So Story Brand, great, he had a great analogy in there, right? And he was basically going through and he's just like, oh, well, if you didn't realize, Tommy Boy is essentially the same movie as Star Wars.
Right.
Right? Like, doesn't matter if it's Chris Farley or Luke Skywalker, right? You've got this hero, and they don't know they've got this big overwhelming problem, right? Doesn't matter if, their dad just died and their business is going under, or they have to save the galaxy and they don't understand the powers of the Force, right? Like, and then they meet this guide. Doesn't matter if it's David Spade or Yoda, who gives them a plan, walks them, right? Like, but the whole key there is, at the end of the day, the homeowner cares about themselves way more than they do about your business.
That's why they're talking
any kind of way.
That's why they're talking to you. I'll just actually, for listeners, like on the Story Brand thing, I've actually recommended this in another episode. It's like my #1 go-to sales and marketing book. But basically, just to explain it very quickly, if you're unfamiliar, Donald Miller breaks down, he analyzes the scripts of movies and says every movie is organized in the exact same fashion, where, like you say, a hero the hero has a problem. They find a guide who helps them solve the problem. They have this big climax and they succeed in the end. And his point is, you need to build your brand copy, your brand story, your sales pitch in the same way. But here's the really important, compelling point. Most businesses make themselves the hero of the story. And that's why it's hard to sell, because you're talking about yourself. You're talking about like what we can do, and here are the awards that we've won, and here's how amazing our team is. It's like, what they care about is their home and their roof. And I think when you open the conversation with saying like, hey, here's your dream home, and here's what we're going to do to it to solve the problem that you called us about in the first place. That's a really, really powerful point. And it's not that difficult to achieve. You just literally, like, what do? Snap a photo on the iPhone and put it on the proposal?
Yeah. Snap a photo, drag and drop it in, like stitch it in instantly with Company Cam, whatever it is. But I mean, it's that when you think about, you've got a quote that looks like Word or Excel or, this sheet of paper with a bunch imagery, of letters, numbers on it, whatever. And you've got another one with the client's home on the cover, which they have Thanksgiving at and they have Christmas at, and they brought their new little puppy home to and their child. And it's like you're attaching all of these positive feelings and emotions for this place they love to your quote.
Right.
Right? Like there is this emotional contrast between these two that you're starting off with. And then you get into all the other stuff as well, right? So yeah, there's very intentional sales psychology components that we're building in to make this fast, easy, and highly deliverable.
The emotional connection is huge, right? If there's 3 quotes on the table. One has a photo of the homeowner's home. The other are just basically Times New Roman text with maybe a logo from the roofing company, and that's it. That pops.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So I'm just looking at it here. There's like big, beautiful logo of the company in the top right. Huge, like almost the whole page is this beautiful picture of their home. And then there's their name, their address. Like it's really about them.
The story is about them.
The story is about
It's
them.
not about you, the contractor. It's about them.
Yeah. And again, I'll just say it for everyone watching and listening, if you want to get a copy of what I'm holding here in my hand of this perfectly made proposal, you can download it. It's available for free right now. Check it in the link in the description for download right now. So anyway, that's the first component. Big, beautiful photo. They're the hero of the story. What else is encompassed in a really great proposal?
Yeah, I'd say the next thing is to make it highly visual.
Right.
Okay, so visual content, when you go through the stuff compared to written, visual content, it's been shown you will comprehend 10 times faster, and you will retain 10 times longer compared to
long form text.
Yeah, exactly. So I've run this webinar. We put a bunch of words on the page, right? It's, cheese, dough, pepperoni, mushrooms, like all this stuff. And you look at it and it takes you a second or two and you kind of clue in, and it's just like, oh, pizza, right? You flip the slide over and you've got a picture of a pizza. You know it instantly. You understand it instantly. And when I look at it, my mouth even starts to salivate, right? Like you have a physiological response to this thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when you're taking somebody through visually. I remember standing on the ground at a job with the homeowner saying, hey, we need to install a cricket behind your chimney up there because there's a dead spot right now. And we want to make sure it's a high risk for leak. We want to make sure that, water's not getting into the house. Well, I might as well have been speaking French or Greek.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, we're in Canada, so maybe they spoke French. So I'm going to say Greek, right? So as opposed to you give them a picture, they can look at you, put a big red circle around it, and they're like, oh, that looks wrong.
Right.
Like water can obviously pool in this area. And then you mark it up with a couple of lines showing that you're going to add a slight slope to it. It now makes sense, and they could explain it to their spouse that evening, even if the pictures weren't in front of them. Mm-hmm. So you want to make it that visual experience through everything.
I think there's a really important just point, generally speaking, for salespeople or contractors who are still doing the most of the selling for their company, is get away from technical language. Like the minute it's satisfying to you because you know your stuff and you know the terminology and you can rattle it off very, very quickly, but your homeowner has no idea what you're talking about. It's like when I go to the mechanic and I need my vehicle fixed and he goes, yeah, it's this, that, and the other thing. And I'm literally going like, yeah, totally. That sounds awesome. Makes perfect sense. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's like, I have no clue what he's doing to my brake pads. I have to pretend along because I'm embarrassed.
Top up on your headlamp fluid.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I mean. You paid $340 for that.
Look, I'm not a car mechanic, but they, that's another example. Whereas the mechanic I use now, he just shows me photos. He's just like, hey, this is what we did. This was bent, so we had to straighten it out, and then we added these two things. Go, oh, okay, that makes total sense. I understand why the quote was that much. I don't have a hard time forking over $500 because that looks like a lot of work. So here's my point. If you're sitting there explaining things verbally using language when just showing, I'm looking at the example right now. There's a photo of the roof with
there's photos everywhere.
Yeah, it's like Sesame Street drawings. It's just like, here's a big circle. This is a problem. Arrow to here. It's really, really clear.
Yeah, this thing's full of visuals. And Ryan, to your point earlier around just like the fundamentals of sales psychology, you're totally right. It's interesting. Like humans, for most of humanity, couldn't read, right? You visually saw stuff and reacted to it. So it makes sense. Like that's what's humanly ingrained in us, in our biology, right? Is to visually see things. So no, this is cool. This thing's just full of pictures of happy homeowners and testimonials and the products and their actual roof. And yeah, this is fantastic. So anyway, that's the second point. It's super, super visual. What else? What's the kind of third key piece of every great proposal?
Yeah, I'd say the third one is that professional graphic design element, right? Like homeowners expect that companies are going to be professional. And if they feel like that experience or that professionalism falls off a cliff at any point along the way, they're going to become really suspicious of that, right? So you've got a great website, you've got, a nice business card, you show up in a clean truck and, a clean golf top and all of that stuff. And then you give this quote that is, looks like Word again versus a competitor giving something really, really compelling. Now it suddenly feels like there's potential mistrust that comes in there where it's like, well, I thought you were going to give me this really great experience, but now all of a sudden it's starting to fall off a bit right when I'm supposed to be signing and we're supposed to be, locking this deal in. What am I? Is something else going to fall off right after this? And so 100%. These days, people put a lot of time and energy into brands all over the place out there, and we trust them. Like those brands are big deals and really valuable. So you want to just make sure you keep reinforcing with that professional graphic design how valuable your brand and your company is and what you're going to give them.
Yeah. So your ability to draw shapes nicely in Microsoft Word doesn't
help.
It's not quite there. It's not quite there.
So I will say, you were with Breakthrough Academy over this past year. I had a really nice piece of sales collateral built by our design agency. It cost us some money for sure, but it was basically what I had was some infographics built that described our process in big chunky text but highly visual with colors. And then I had some iconography designed. So think of this, like instead of just saying we do really high quality workmanship, it says workmanship. And now there's a little icon of a tool and a wrench. Like you can have a graphic designer build stuff like that for your brand package relatively inexpensively. And I'm telling you, because I've done a lot of sales and a lot of reps doing this, somebody seeing a little symbol of an idea versus you trying to write it out or explain it verbally, it's less work for you and it's more compelling for them. Like this is a total no-brainer if you want to raise your closing ratio.
Well, we consume content so quickly. Look at everywhere else in life, right? Instagram, Facebook, the newspaper, we consume content so quickly and so visually, right? Like we're trying to make decisions all the time on what to give our attention to. And so I can almost guarantee you on pages as you go through it, like a manufacturer's page of a product that you want to highlight, homeowners are going to look at the pictures, maybe catch the headlines. They're not going to read the text.
Totally.
No.
Yeah.
And so the better job you can do with those visuals, the better you will have your chance of getting that message through to the homeowner that you want to communicate.
100%, right? Speaking of changes in consumer trends, right? Like the world over the last decade or two has gotten so much faster and busier than it ever has for people. And people are forced to make decisions pretty quickly based on heavily based on trust in brands, right? Like when someone sees that Uber logo, there's an automatic element of trust right there, right? When someone sees an Apple logo, when someone sees a Home Depot logo, they associate stuff very, very quickly with that. And I think that brands are a way more powerful thing than ever before. And if your visual design game, so how quickly someone interprets your brand and the trust associated with it isn't up to a really high level, and you want to keep playing in this space for a long period of time, you've got to change, right? I remember, so prior to Breakthrough Academy, during the creation of Shack Shine, which is now like a huge player in the window and gutter cleaning space in Canada and quickly moving into the US, we were so conscious of all of those visual touch points with a customer, right? Clean, shiny vans. They were all brand new sprinters. They were beautifully wrapped top to bottom, roof and everything, and in these beautiful designs. They were always clean inside. We had a protocol. The technicians had to take them for a thorough car wash every single week, right down to the wheels. Nothing could ever be, the contractor dashboard with the papers. Like you can't have that. they were always in clean polo shirts, iPad where they greet you with the work order on an iPad at the door. All the tools are clean and organized and even have a little brand logo on there. It's just like the whole visual experience is super, super important because people rely on that now more than ever to make decisions. So yeah, it's a really good point, and that reasoning behind it makes so much sense. Like you have to have true professional graphic design in the proposal. So it's good. Ryan, coming back to the components, I'm looking at this awesome SumoQuote here. What is the next kind of key piece of every awesome quote?
Well, it's one I'd say that we all know. We've all wrestled with. We just haven't wrestled with it in our quotes yet, right? And it's this concept of social proof, right? Yeah. So social proof being, what are others saying about it? Can I trust this? Is this a brand that people have had good interactions with? And so there's a number of things that we do with our presentations with our roofing company. So one being, we put a certification logo on the cover, right? Hey, we are trusted by these manufacturers out there, right, and they have said that we are trustworthy.
Like I see this Owens Corning Platinum Preferred Contractor right at the front.
Let's just break down the social proof concept before we get into the example. For listeners, social proof is, I heard this quote from this marketing guy that we worked with years ago. He said, "Nobody cares what you have to say about yourself. They care about what other people have to say about you." And social proof is that. So it's what are vendor partners saying, what are customers saying, it's testimonials, it's Google reviews. It can come in many different forms, but it's essentially what other people, other stakeholders are saying about you and your brand. That's what social proof is. And in the context of one of these Sumo quotes, what does that usually look like? Is it photos? Is it quotes? Is it links to other stuff? Like how do you actually convey that in a visual proposal?
Yeah, I mean, we give contractors the ability to sort of pick their way with that, right? So the one is the easiest one, and it's built in on every quote, is drop a certification logo here, right? Load it in there once. It'll be there on every single quote. And now a homeowner right away. And it could be a certification logo. It could be an image of a 5-star Google review, sort of like, but it's reinforcing that stuff. The other one that we've built, so with SumoQuote, you can add these custom marketing pages. So build a marketing page, have our team build a marketing page for you. But the one that we love and include all the time is this one of client testimonials. And so we've got pictures of 3 different homeowners, couples on this page. There's a little play icon on it. And because they're looking at this on a PDF online oftentimes, that play icon, if they hit that, it'll actually pop up a video of that homeowner talking, sharing the experience they've had. If they don't want to click on that, we've put a quote from the homeowner right below it.
Totally, I see it right here. Yeah, it's great.
And so we've tried to make sure that we've got the options, whatever the homeowner, however they're choosing to interact with this thing. But it's that concept of, what's the strongest chance that you have of closing a deal? Typically, it's when a family member or close friend refers you, right? Oh, I had a great experience with them. Because homeowners are all trying to figure out, who can I trust?
Totally.
So
you know what this solves, Ryan, which I love, is like a lot of the times for salespeople, one of the most frustrating things is you get to your close and they're like, yeah, we love everything, we like you, we like the price, but actually, you know what? Do you have any referrals? Like, can we just make a few phone calls? We just kind of want to check things out a little, and then you're like,
here they are.
Of course you go, yeah, of course you can, no problem. But in your mind, you're going like, oh my God, why didn't you say this earlier? So then you find the numbers and you connect with them, and it's like you've created. It's something that you now need to solve. These little testimonials basically answer an objection before they even come up.
Yeah, here's Samantha and Brad. They're just like me and my wife.
Yeah,
they're there.
Yeah. And they're stoked on the job that they got.
Exactly.
Well, and it's like everything these days, automate it. Make it fast and easy. So, I mean, look, these are homeowners. They were willing to spend an afternoon with us, filming the video, going through this stuff, us getting a bunch of different shots with them and everything else.
Stoked.
Yeah, like they would never spend 2-3 hours with us if they weren't really excited about the work that we had completed for 100%. Them and how smooth it went. So,
yeah, 100%. I love it. It's good. And again, I love the scalability of this, because otherwise you're relying on every one of your individual salespeople, like in your roofing company, to be able to execute on this really well, like make the connection to the previous client, know who they are, all this kind of stuff. This way it's foolproof, right? You can hire another salesperson and boom, these things are right in here. That's great. Awesome. I love it. Let's go to the 5th and final key kind of piece to every great quote.
Yeah, I mean, this one should be obvious, but every great quote has to be easy to sign, right? Like the most important thing at the end of the day is to get a signature. And so it's got to be really easy to sign. Right?
Spoken by a true closer, guys.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You want to get that signature. You want to deposit. Why make it difficult or confusing for how to do that? So in SumoQuote, what does that actually look like when you get to the end of it? Is it like a pretty easy e-signature thing? Is there a box? Like, what do they need to do?
Yeah, and so we give options, right? So if you are standing there with the homeowner, you've walked them through the presentation, the quote on your iPad, whatever it is, and there's a button there that says sign now.
Yeah.
Done, right? And they just go click the package they want, click, pick the upgrades they want, put in their colors, done. If it's something that you're not standing there with them, well, then you can email it to them. They hit a button that says, review and sign. They walk through, review everything, and they just go, next and sign now. Pick the package they want, pick the upgrades they want, put in their colors. And really cool these days is we've got financing. So make it easy to sign. It's even easier to sign if you can't afford it, but we've provided a solution for you.
And it's built right in here. Like I see this from Sunlight Financial. It's built right into the proposal.
Yeah, it's built right. Every quote, so if you're doing a good, better, best, you could have a different plan on there. So one of the strategies that I've been encouraging people to test out is do a 6.99 5-year on your good and your better, and on your best, do a 6.99 10-year.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden that monthly price is the cheapest for the most expensive one. And they look at that and it's like, yeah, I did that over 10 years because you can buy this out at any time with absolutely no penalty.
Yeah.
So it manages your cash, and really this is the package you should be putting on your house.
Right.
This is what I would put on my house. It's absolutely the one that is going to have the highest level of protection and longevity for you.
You've reduced all friction, like getting to the back half of the proposal of the quote, which, as any salesperson knows, like these are the moments where you really need to execute things right. You need to say things in the right order. You get to that moment where you're essentially asking to do a deal with your homeowner, with your customer. And this, we'll talk about sort of how this makes your business more scalable, but this, like, making it easy to close. Work with a lot of contractors, work with a lot of sales teams as well. I'm blown away at how many people being in business for 5-10 years, they're still actually nervous to ask for the job at the end of this. They're like, I don't, I just like to email it and then let them think about it. It's like, this makes it so easy to just be like, and so, okay, next steps to get in the calendar, literally just sign here and these are your financing terms, and boom. It's like, so grease the wheels. Yeah. It is so easy.
And this is in other industries, kind of to what we were talking about earlier, like outside of contracting, homeowners are used to super easy purchasing. Like I just bought a new iPhone case. Like, they're literally on the website. Like I'm on the iPhone itself, and they're literally just like, oh yeah, just double tap the right button twice on like Apple Pay, and boom, it'll show up to your door in 2 days. Like, they make it so easy to buy. And this certainly is a way better approach than, why don't you fax me the sign and then mail me the deposit check or whatever. Right? I love how easy you guys make this in this proposal. Super important if you're serious about your closing game. So, Ryan, this is awesome. This example of a great SumoQuote proposal is so good. Again, if you haven't already, if you're listening to this, you got to download this and check it out. It's an example of an absolutely perfect proposal. Just check the link in the show description and download a PDF copy of what we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
But those are 5 great components.
Let's recap
of an exceptional one.
Photos.
So it's
Photo of a customer's home.
Right off the front page.
Yeah. Number 1, photo of a customer's home. Number 2, the entire quote, not just the front page, but the entire quote is highly visual. Number 3, you use professional graphic design, different aspects on different pages to tell a more visual story. You use social proofs. That's testimonials. It's Google reviews. It's badges, and it's like accomplishments, awards, it's certifications. And then number 5, which is probably my favorite, is it is extremely easy to sign for the customer, making your closes a lot easier. So, those are sort of like the ingredients to go into a great proposal. I want to take a step back from this part of the conversation and look at how this integrates in a business more holistically. So, big picture, when you have this as a part of your sales process, how, just off the top of your head, like how does that make scaling easier?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things, right? Like for the contractor that is going from, being the contractor, being the owner, selling every job, you are going to be likely the best salesperson in your organization because you care the most, you have the greatest understanding. There's all of these things that you can't just put on somebody else.
Right.
And so again, this is where technology actually can help do a beautiful job of this stuff, is you can standardize these things to make sure that stuff doesn't get missed, right? Important details that a new salesperson might miss or forget, but you now got this pre-built structure to take them through. So that would be, what product offerings do you want to have? You want to make sure you talk about upgrades, right? How do you make sure you communicate the customer the story of the contractor and why they're trustworthy? And there's all of these things that you want to make sure are included, but you can standardize that and have
like you're
somebody
preventing
rolling.
that human error element, right? Like there's a very good reason why, use like a great analogy here with airplanes and flight. Pilots are actually mandated to use computers and autopilot in bad weather conditions because they know that the biggest risk is the pilot overlooking something, right? So they'll put technology which doesn't make those repetitive mistakes.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing to do is a pre-flight check, and they go through very, very linear, a certain series of steps that it's impossible to miss something.
Yeah.
And that's what something like this does as well. For a newer, more junior salesperson, a lot of salespeople don't have the highest attention to detail.
Totally.
So if your proposal building process forces you to go through a checklist and say, did I communicate this? Did I ask them about that? Has this been explained clearly? What that solves, and this is a huge complaint for a lot of people, a lot of contractors who are trying to step out of sales, is that sales to production handoff. Yeah. Like this project has been sold by one individual. It's entered the schedule and gone into the CRM, and maybe office managers dealt with it. Now it's been passed to a project manager, a foreman, or a site lead, whatever you call it in your business. Now this person is going off of, information that was built a month or two ago that's been handed off to 2 or 3 people. The broken telephone that can happen when this stuff isn't really clear and really linear is massive. And that can lead to huge production problems later on. It really clogs up your plan. Things slow down. And it's not because your production staff are incompetent. It's literally like what was talked about with the customer wasn't communicated to the people on site.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, and we haven't talked about any of this stuff, right? But one of the things with SumoQuote is we've recently added work orders and material orders. Okay. One of the things that is really unique in the work orders that we help contractors put together, right? You get a quote signed, you hit a button, everything spits into a work order, including your photos. So these same elements that we've talked about it being really highly visual and being able to explain those things, photos does that way better than a bunch of words typed out and written in, which is what everybody's doing right now, or even just calling them and talking to them on the phone, and they forget about it.
Right.
And so when you can have these photos stitched into your work order with arrows pointing at flashings to replace or trims to be aware of or whatever it is, like
totally.
Those are critical as well as you want to be able to scale.
The crew on site gets that information as well. Like not only did it make the job easier to sell to the customer, it makes the job easier to produce for the foreman or the PM or whoever's on site making the job happen a month or 2 or 6 later. So I think that's a hugely important piece. Is it's not just a sales tool, it does have some secondary effects on your production capacity as well.
And on that note, you guys also did build in, I think you said, some really cool integrations with Company Cam, right? You actually said you were in Nebraska with them just last week?
Yeah, earlier this week. So a couple of days ago.
Yeah. So you guys have a close relationship with them. So all these integrations for photos and markups, everything's built into SumoQuote.
Yeah, super smooth. And I mean, with Company Cam, it's really easy how you can look through a project and all the project photos right there in your SumoQuote report. Even if you don't have Company Cam, drag and drop a photo in, crop it, mark it up, make your notes right in SumoQuote. Like it can all be done right there as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
The one point that you made earlier, I just want to make sure is clear for listeners. Like this makes scaling easier because when you hire salespeople, it's very unlikely that you're going to find someone that sells better than you. You said that before.
It's a strong assumption. You have to operate under that assumption.
It's probably
wrong,
true. You could be wrong. You could find a unicorn, but probably you're going to hire someone who isn't as passionate about the brand. They're not as motivated because it's not their business. This is giving them a huge step up, a huge competitive advantage in that it does some of the selling for them. So instead of looking like I'm looking for an absolute rock star, I need the best of the best of the best person to sell my roofs or sell my renovation projects or sell my landscaping projects, whatever. You can actually say, you know what, I can take a really solid B+ because SumoQuote is going to backfill whatever skill deficiencies they have when they start. And we'll work on that other stuff in their onboarding in the first few months. But this is like, you're really setting people up for success instead of what happens most of the time is I hired my first salesperson. 3 months later, I fired them because they weren't selling as much as me. And it's like, of course they weren't.
Yeah. Well, if you want to hire one or you want to hire 10, you can hire them and everything's pre-built and ready to go.
Totally.
It all exists in there. It's just the salesperson name gets swapped automatically because they're the one logged into the account. Everything else continues on. So it's, highly scalable in how you go through that stuff.
So, love that. I want to talk quickly about like protection and liability. Like what kind of nightmare stories for contractors does having something like this protect you from?
I'd say there's a couple of things, right? And the first one, you mentioned company cam before. The first one is getting it visibly put into the quote, right? Hey, I've included a photo. We're not doing work on this component.
Right.
And I've circled it and I've put an arrow at it and I've made a note on it.
Right. It makes it black and white.
And it wasn't just in an email hidden somewhere. This was a part of the contract that you signed, all part of the same document.
So when the customer comes back at the end of the job and says, well, I thought you were going to do all this other stuff. You're like, no, you didn't. Because like here it is written. It's super clear.
Yeah. We've had a number of landscaping companies in particular comment on that, where it's like, hey, we've got an overview of the backyard. We added the lines around where we were going to work, what we were going to do. Like really easy to put those components in. Right. Fully, clearly communicated exactly what was going on the project.
I have done tens of thousands of dollars of work for free over the years because I was not able to communicate this stuff well. Totally. And you're all, as the contractor, you're just going, well,
you're painting this whole deck.
yeah. You're like, well, I wasn't clear. So I love that. Anything else on the protection?
Well, I'd say the other one is just your proper terms and conditions, disclaimers, having those in there. There's a number of different pages. One of the interesting things we added probably about 4 or 5 months ago was the ability to add customer signature or initial tokens on pages. So you could craft
specific ones.
So if you drop on a customer signature or customer initials token on a text page, when the homeowner is signing off, that's going to trigger the system to say, hey, have you read and agreed to having your signature initials applied to the terms and conditions page, the additional acknowledgements page, the, whatever it is. And when they have to check that box or they won't be able to sign it. So when they check that box, we apply their signature and initials to that page as well. You can make sure that things are thoroughly documented, that they have agreed and approved to everything that is supposed to be done. It's just the professional way to make sure you are protected all the time with things.
Yeah, I really like that. I've done that even to our Breakthrough Academy agreements. There's like the general sign at the end, but anytime there's like really important bits, like we have one around like confidentiality of business information between BTA members, like there's a forced initial in addition to the main signature page by that one. So anything that's super important, you can do that. That's really cool. That's an awesome functionality. I like that.
Yeah. So that's actually something that, depending on the trade that you're in, but roofing contractors, there's a lot of insurance work going on out there. They'll use our documents and forms for all of their agreements, right? So whether it's a contingency agreement, a final authorization agreement, there's a lot of different things that it can be used for.
That's really cool. Yeah. Again, on this note of like humans are going to make errors, the more that you can bulletproof it. If you're hiring your first salesperson or you're going from 5 to 8 salespeople, you're going to have issues come up inevitably as you start to scale out. And the more that you can implement technology and systems to prevent that, the better. On that note, Ryan, I do want to switch gears and ask you this. There is so much technology that's coming into the world of of contracting, and entrepreneurs are very excited about all kinds of things that can help streamline the business. There's a common syndrome of, I think Benji calls it, getting just on the carousel of buying software. What is your take on the importance of implementation, right? Because it's very easy to just purchase something, but to implement it to a high level is a whole different ballgame. What's your advice to the smart entrepreneurial contractor that's looking at, okay, I need to get some of this technology in to improve my prospect and customer experience, my operational excellence, but I got to get this stuff dialed in properly. What are kind of key pieces of advice you might have around the implementation aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one is ask the question of how long does this typically take to implement, to build out, right? So as you're talking to, jump on a demo, see what it's like, ask your questions, go through that, but ask that question. And what is the onboarding process like? I know that's something with SumoQuote that we created this totally custom crafted experience for, where the first time you log in, it's drag and drop your logo here. We're going to auto detect the colors from your logo, right? You don't have to look up your hex code. You don't have to know what RGB is or any of that stuff, right? Like, we're just going to auto detect it. Just click on the color that you want to be your primary color and your secondary color. And then we go through and it's like, well, what kind of contractor are you? And as you click on the type of contractor you are, we're going to preload price list items, marketing pages. You know, if you say that I install Owens Corning and Atlas and Malarkey, we're going to load all those items for you, including marketing pages that we've gotten from them. And
like
it's
the actual products. And
the
everything.
actual products, we go through and load that stuff with this. So I mean, that's a portion of getting somebody set up. People still need to customize that.
Right.
But I would say, one, use the company. Like, they should be working with you and helping with you. Book time with them, book time with their support, use the company to help with that. And then the last one, I'd just say make a commitment. Like, make sure you say, okay, I do want to implement this, so I do need to set a day aside.
Yeah. Totally.
And then make sure that you give yourself a deadline and you actually make a commitment to spending a little bit of time on it. And if the software has been built well and intuitively and is, has these things in place, it shouldn't take you weeks or months and stuff like that to get going.
Yeah, awesome. There's a couple of really good points. I just want to highlight the two of them there. Like, so you guys as a company, for you to be successful, you need your customers, the contractors, to be successful on it in order to stick long-term, right? So
absolutely,
every software company, every serious software company is going to have a customer success, like an onboarding customer success team, where these people are hired and their whole job is to make you successful. So use them, right? You've got very aligned kind of goals. So that's a really good point. And then the other one, which I felt personally, it's like, this stuff does take time. It's worth it, but it does take time. When you do choose to dive into something, block time in all of the coming weeks into your calendar to work on the implementation of this, because we all know, like, stuff happens, right? Employees, they're sick. This guy turns over. We hired a new one. They need to be on board. This stuff just takes over your schedule. And if you've not created blocks to actually oversee the focused implementation of it and to train the relevant people on your team in this stuff, it's not going to happen. So anyway, lots to get excited about, but be mindful. This stuff only works if you implement it effectively. Awesome. I've got one final question here, just to close. One that I'm excited to get your take on. We talk about how technology is such a huge force in the contracting space and is becoming even more so. As a tech company founder and a contractor, you've got a really cool view on this. Where do you see this whole landscape going in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to only continue to go digital, and the work that people are putting into it right now is going to set themselves up for that. They're going to see that success in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Like, it's the work, the positioning that companies are doing right now with their business is going to pay off for a long time to come. But I think that's going to be more digital, more interactive, more on devices. Homeowners are already making major purchases completely online through the guidance of tools, but tools that can be automated and provide these unique type experiences, right? I do still think that because there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of custom components of a home, and we want to have, it's this concept of mass customization, right? Like, we want to make sure we're talking about the uniqueness of each person's home. And so I do still think there is going to be a human element to that. And we want to keep that in there. There's going to be some ways that we can automate that. There's going to be other ways that we're just going to increase our efficiency like crazy. And so for SumoQuote, and this is sort of a realization I've gotten coming out of the contractor world and getting into technology, but it kind of blows your mind where you're like, hey, my team is sitting here and, hour after hour, they're just pounding through demos and talking to these great individuals and being able to connect with them. And it's a great experience for the contractor. It's the same for the homeowner, right? Like it is more convenient to have a Zoom meeting than it is to have a contractor, meeting them in their house, right? Like if a contractor wants to meet me in my house, well, one, I got to come home from work a little bit early.
Right.
I get there. Kids are excited to see me, right? House is typically a little messy. Kids are typically a little crazy, right? Like there's no other purchase that I do where it's like, hey, I'm going to buy a car. Well, car salesman, why don't you come over to my house and hang out with me in my personal setting? So that, right? Like, This is not the experience I want. So, and I think contractors should be starting to think more about Calendly and Zoom and ways to make it to not lose the human element and the human touch, but to make it more convenient for everyone and knock off that 45-minute drive across town to get a signature and back again and stuff. So
I think there are going to be cases where it does make sense to go to someone's home and look at stuff. For some of our listeners who are selling really large average job size products, full renos, additions, custom home builders, really expensive stuff. We're not saying that by next year you need to be selling through Zoom or you're going to be out of business. What we're saying is still do the in-person stuff when available, but prepare yourself for a future in which the customer is dictating to you, hey, you know what? Actually, we're really busy this weekend. Can we hop on Zoom or can we hop on Google Meet tonight for 45 minutes and do a bit of a powwow there? Be ready for that because I think it's probably coming a lot sooner than you think.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, and sorry, to avoid any confusion there, you're absolutely right. You still need to go there. And, with the roofing background, you still got to check how many layers am I tearing off here? 1 or 4, right? What is my access? What is going to add additional costs to this? There's tools out there like EagleView that are incredibly powerful and you can get better data and measurements instantly from sitting at the office. But there's other stuff that you got to go to site for.
Totally.
It's just making it more convenient for the homeowner in how you execute that close and connect with them on an ongoing basis with it.
I couldn't agree more. I wanted to ask just in closing, Ryan, tell us just really quick where for listeners that want to learn a little bit more about SumoQuote, where do they find out more about the product? What kind of applications does this really work for? Just give us a rundown on you guys.
Yeah, of course. So SumoQuote, just go to sumoquote.com. You can check out everything there. You can sign up for a free trial. So 2-week free trial, jump on there and do that. And I would definitely say if you're signing up for a trial, get a demo because we are privileged to be able to see, connect with thousands of contractors and see a lot of different ways of how this stuff is used. Mm-hmm. So, and we're happy to sort of share some best practices that we've learned both with the roofing company that I've run and, have helped scale now and with some best practices that we hear about out there. So yeah, go to the website, grab a free trial, sign up for a demo, easiest way to connect with us and start checking things out.
Amazing.
Awesome. I love it. So if you're serious about taking your proposal game to a whole other level, check out SumoQuote and also check out this prime example that we've linked here. Go to the link in the description and you can download that. These guys certainly know what's up when it comes to creating great proposals. So Ryan, thanks for flying out to be in studio with us and hanging out. It was a great conversation.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Always looking for an excuse to be in Vancouver. So thanks for having me.
Love it. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of Contractor Evolution. If you've already subscribed to our channel, consider sharing this episode with another contractor who you think needs to hear it.